Hi, folks. It's been a while. I've been under the weather. Good to see you back. And I had maybe a month ago said that I was going to um, resign from this channel, and I got so many emails back asking me to stay on, and the main reason is was the most beautiful reason. They said, Jim, you talk about things that other people don't, and here's what we want to tell you is that if you share one thing that helps us pull out of our rut, if you share just one thing to one person, and let's say you have, I think I have 500 subscribers. If any of them you've helped, you should stay on. So I got emails like this ever since I said I was going off. And I've got one here said, that, where is this? One person wrote me a personal letter that here she is. I'll say hi to Rhonda. Let's see, Rhonda Holt. She gave me her address. She says, since we're not going to be on YouTube, can we stay together on whatever, whether it's, I haven't checked to see if she's on my Facebook account. I am on Facebook if any of y'all want to join me, but be sure to put on the messenger, say I saw you on Facebook. It's best to do that rather than just to hit my face, because there's so many frauds out there. They call them bots. I don't know too much about it. This girl's from Colorado. The reason I wrote her address down is I'm going to send her a free signed poetry book, one or two, in the next few days. It was what I said I would do when I made my last broadcast before I changed my mind. So I got one person responding out of 500 that I said, if you'd like to have a free signed autograph book, just email me. I gave my email address, and I think she was the only one that wrote to ask for that. There was a gentleman that wrote that said something like, I hate to see you go, but please stay on. And then I had a whole bunch of other people saying, please stay on. So this is the first one I've put on since then, and it's been less than a month. And I feel better now, thank you. I'm talking about being humble. And At my age, I'm surprised that being humble has been a way for me to prosper and retire. I'll share this. My first job was as a paper boy for several years. A paper boy for the Courier-Journal and Louisville Times. Pretty humbling job, because if a person disappeared without paying me, I still had to pay for the papers. Okay, and then I was very humble in college, not by choice, by lack of ability to study. Made it through that, though. Talked about that maybe last time or a couple times before. And then I was told, after I finished a degree in psychology, that nobody would come to see me. Okay. And and for 3 to 4 years, I interviewed at different clinics in Louisville, and they said, "You've got the job, just call back tomorrow." I'd call back tomorrow, they wouldn't receive the call. Call back the next day, they wouldn't receive the call. This went on for 2 or 3 years. Well, it took me 3 times to pass the psychology license, too, by the way. I'll mention that I was so shy, so bashful, that I failed the test till the 3rd time. Well, there were 3 tests. I had to pass all 3 tests to be a psychologist. So when that happened, it took 3 years to find the first job because of my age. I don't know if I was 30 then or what, but they wanted people they could hire right out of graduate school for the lowest amount of money they could, and I'm up there 30 instead of 22, 23. So you see the problem there. It's okay. Being humble in this case was I'm giving up applying at jobs. I'm giving up sending out resumes. I'm giving up filling out applications. I'm giving up. I'm going to substitute teach. You can imagine how much fun substitute teaching is when the teacher's gone and the people can say, I got to go to the restroom, I got to go here, I got to go there, I got to leave early. Yeah, all that. And nothing happened for about 3 years till I got a phone call from a person that I never applied to. I tell you why I didn't apply to them. It was Charter Hospital on Browns Lane, and I think it was Browns Lane in Louisville. It's still there, but it's now called by a different name. Jefferson Hospital, I think, but I'm not sure. I tell you what, the guy didn't want to even take my resume. Do you know why? He said, we require two things to work here because we're primarily a addiction center. You have not been sober for 3 years. And that's one of our requirements, that you've been sober and if possible, you've been going to AA meetings. Number two, you haven't worked in a rehab center for 3 years. Well, I did volunteer at Our Lady of Peace for 6 months, and they wouldn't hire me for whatever reason. Maybe I had more education than most of them, because some of them had GEDs in high school, but because they were recovering, they call them recovering alcoholics and drug addicts, they got hired. So I never heard from them. So here we go. 3 years after about 3 years taking the psychology exam 3 times, 3 more years I've waited to get a job, applied, gave up. I get a phone call from Charter Hospital in Louisville from the guy that said, I don't want your resume because we won't hire you because you haven't been sober for 3 years, or you haven't worked in the field for 3 years. But he knew me. He knew my name. And I get a phone call 3 years later. It was Charter Hospital. It was the very guy that said he wasn't going to hire me. He said, are you working? And I started apologizing and telling him I had a lot of places that I've applied to, and I'll probably get a job here pretty soon. He says, look, if you'll come in tomorrow to Human Resources Department, you've got a part-time job for 20 hours, $8 an hour. $8 an hour. 20 hours. But he said, you can work it up to full time. Well, when you've got nothing to lose, is what Bob Dylan said. So I went in there. I celebrated by drinking most of a bottle of wine the night before the interview, and I go in. It wasn't an interview. It was actually filling out forms, I was told. So it wasn't an interview. The interview was when he called. He just said, do you want a job? So yeah, that was the interview. And he knew enough about me, though, because we had touched base when I worked at Our Lady of Peace, back and forth. So Our Lady of Peace is where I volunteered for 6 months. I worked with the hardcore drug addicts on purpose. I could have worked with a division of alcoholics, but I said I wanted to work with the hardest to help. That's why I chose that. So anyhow, I go in there and I fill out all the paperwork with this lovely lady who's a human resources lady, and I'm getting ready to leave. She says, you need to go down here, second door on the left, there's a nurse there. She's going to take a urine sample, drug sample. I thought, I just drank most of a bottle of wine last night. I'm going to lose this job before I get it. Well, I wouldn't tell anybody I had the job until I got my first paycheck 2 weeks later. Moving on with this, I ended up with the person that hired me with his job because he went into private practice, and I applied for it. So I got his job, and at the same time, another facility, a HMO called United Behavioral Systems, owned by United Healthcare, asked if I wanted to work on call. That would be work after they close at 5 and then till 8 the next morning. And I said, sure. So I had 2 paychecks going on until they closed all the they closed all the charter hospitals because 1 or 2 of them were doing fraudulent things, and it hit it hit the news. It was pretty bad. They told people that were coming in, I'm talking about the workers, they told the therapists to change the diagnosis to something that paid a lot more, and they could get a lot more and keep more time for the person. And this was, again, Charter Hospital. If you look them up, you could probably see the history of them. We didn't do that. I didn't. Nobody in my hospital committed scenes like that, but it closed anyhow. I think it turned into Jefferson Hospital, and right now it's Wellstone Hospital. Interesting as it is, I got a call or two to come back to it, but in the one in Jeffersonville, Indiana, instead of the one in Louisville. But I became director of LifeSpring Mental Health Services in Madison, Indiana, and somehow my name got out as being able to do both mental health and substance abuse, and above all, treating people with respect. Okay, very humble. They said, how much you want on that first job? They said, we'll give you $8 an hour. I took $8 an hour. When they hired me for LifeSpring in Jeffersonville, they said, how much you want? I said, I don't know. What do you think? What do you think the regular price is for a director? That this would be in Madison, Indiana. They had 6 or 7 offices. They said, we take 30,000. So sounds good to me. So I've been told that on today's scale, it might be twice as much. I didn't care. I was glad to have a job. And this whole episode is about being humble. It's not questioning them that they're offering me less. It's not negotiating. It's being thankful that someone thinks enough of me to offer me any job whatsoever. Now, someone just sent me a email post. She's pretty attractive, but let it go. the thing that happened is I quit being director of LifeSpring in Madison after 3 years because of the heavy duty work I was doing. I had people, therapists that I was over. I had support staff I was over. I had to go to the hospital and do evaluations and get people out of there to treatment centers if they were on alcohol or drugs. And then I had a full case of 40 hours. And after 3 years, I started getting burned out, so I resigned. Without insurance, without any pay. And I knew a lady that had one office available in a building, and there were other therapists in there, but there was one office space open, and for $300, and she said, "Come on in." And I had no clients. Talking about starting out being humble, I saw people with no insurance. If people came in and they went to the office and had appointments, well, of course I didn't see them because they had appointments with the other therapist and they probably had good insurance. Well, if a person didn't have insurance, they were turned away. I would say, "I'll see you. I'll see you." And I saw anyone without insurance, and many of them were waiting on their insurance, but it hadn't come through yet. They had applied for it, but it hadn't come through. I'll just make it that simple. So the other therapists didn't see them because they knew they weren't going to get paid. Well, I went ahead and made copies of their insurance card, even though it hadn't been, they hadn't worked long enough yet for it to kick in. I made a copy of it and sent it in and asked if I could be a provider with them. And over a period of a year, I had gotten a list of every insurance company in Indiana and employee assistance programs in Indiana and anybody else that would pay in Indiana. And I started getting on networks and getting paid, and then here comes somebody from a major company, and I had my door open. They said, "Are you interested in contracting with another corporation?" I said, "Yeah." I said, "I'm really working for myself, so I'm not with a corporation." They said, "How do you feel about," and they quoted a price, and I was with them. I took the contract. I was with them for year after year after year until I retired. And the pay kept going up to where I never worked for another agency. I didn't really work for them other than on contract. And they treated me so well because I was willing to take what they were willing to pay. A thing of being humble. And I could have really retired years before I did, but I gave out so many of my business cards that people kept on calling and giving out, I'm not bragging by the way, but giving out my cards to other people. And I couldn't say no. I took them in. And even after I closed my office, I took another office that was $200 a month. It was in a big complex, but they had a small office that they couldn't rent because it was so small. They said you can have it for I think it was $180 a month. And people kept on coming and coming and coming and coming. Finally, I had to say, it's over. I've seen as many people as I can. They were coming in with hard drugs. We're talking about the hardest. It's Oxycontin, heroin mixed with that other drug that will kill you. I can't think of the name of it. It's what they give cancer patients. It's coming in from Mexico. My mind's getting a little slow, as you can tell. Okay, this was aimed to just talk about being humble. And what I want to end with is I never asked for a penny. As a paper boy, I took what they gave me. On my first job, I took what they gave me. When I went with Charter Hospital, I took what they gave me. When I took the last contract, when I contracted, they kept raising my price that they paid me until I realized being nice and being humble worked for me and possibly might work for other people. Yeah. Having said that, if you want more talks like this, feel free to hit subscribe and like. If you've made it this long, what are we now? We're not at 30 minutes yet, so you may still be hanging in there with me. Feel free to leave any responses and messages, and I'll try my best to answer them. But don't get upset if I don't, because I haven't been feeling that well recently. So the topic is be humble. Be humble and prosper. How about that? I just thought of that. I have to come up with the title. Be humble and prosper in life. That's what I'll put on there. God bless you. And realize that if it worked for me, it might work for you. How's that?